Hi, Andy. Welcome to the Lives of the Artists. How are you?
Hi, Nick. I'm doing good. Doing
Fan-
good.
Fantastic. I am very excited about this conversation. I came across your work in 2017. And I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you walk into a gallery and you see a painting and you think to yourself, damn, I wish I painted that. That's such a great idea.
Yes, I've had that. I've had that. Definitely.
So I mean that was basically my first impression when I saw your work. I've been an admirer of your work since I came across it in 2017.
Yeah.
Where are you now?
I'm in my studio. I'm in Los Angeles, which is it's like the city I was born and raised in, and I've pretty much always been here. I, I moved around a little bit right after college, but always ended up back in LA.
Born and raised in LA.
Yes, yes. There's actually a fashion brand called Born Raised.
Oh really?
It's from LA. Yeah, it's sort of.
Not your fashion brand.
It's not mine. No, I think it's a little cliche, but it's true in my case. Yeah.
But there's so many people that are sort of transient. It's quite a transient population in LA. Is there or is there?
Yes, I think that's the idea behind the brand because it is like growing up in a tourist trap or something. It's, all these people are coming, and some of them are coming like vacation. I grew up in Venice Beach, so it was like really touristy, and
Wow.
it's just strange to be from a place like that. I'm sure you know, like London. You're in London, right?
I'm in Somerset
Somerset. Oh, okay.
in the southwest of England. I used to live in London, but in
Okay.
lockdown, I moved down to the countryside because, well, this is actually where I'm from, this part of the world.
Yeah.
So it's funny how, you always come back to what you know and so many
Yeah.
times in life. But
Yeah.
you're from Venice Beach. Is that where your studio is now, or where's your studio
No, now my
located?
my studio is basically in downtown LA. It's just near the LA River, and I've been here for about 10 years, so it's been a little while now.
Wow.
I
And
think
is there a
I think
creative scene down in downtown LA that's
yes, yeah. The arts district has been like artist studios for a long time, for 20 or 30 years, maybe more than that now, since the 70s, I guess. And it's sort of changed. The what used to be artist studios is now more like galleries and restaurants and stuff. And the artist studios are always moving around, you know, different parts of the city. And
where the rent's
um,
cheap?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Where the rent's cheap, there's enough space, and that's getting harder and harder to find, but it still exists. Yeah.
It's funny how the artists always find the new up and coming zone of any city in the world. Then it
Yeah.
gets gentrified and they get pushed out, and then they
Yeah.
go and find the new place.
Yeah. And now the real estate developers, they know about that. So they're like following the artists. The artists are out there finding all the deals, and then the developers come in behind them. Yeah.
How have they developed downtown LA in terms of the arts district? Have they done a good job? Do you think? Is it
Um,
is
yeah,
it
I mean,
quite Hollywood glitzy or?
no, it's not. It's there's legitimately good stuff there. There's Hauser and Wirth moved in, and really kind of took over that block. There had been galleries before Hauser and Wirth, but uh, you know, that's like a mega worldwide gallery, and kind of functions like a museum in downtown LA.
There's a Hauser and Wirth in Somerset too, which has totally changed the
Yeah.
landscape of this
Yeah.
part of the world as well. So it's
So
funny the
yeah,
impact they have.
yeah, you'll know what it's like. It's actually pretty nice, and you know, there's good coffee shops there. That's not a place where I think of. I guess people got moved out for that, although it's not like that was a cute little residential neighborhood. I mean, there was just kind of not much going on there.
Have you
I,
seen a big change since you moved into your studio 10 years ago?
in my neighborhood, not at all. My neighborhood is
No.
like a very industrial, very there's a lot of like Hollywood rentals, and so that just means like big open warehouse buildings that don't do anything most of the time, and then people will rent them for uh, filming commercials and TV shows and stuff.
Oh, so you're surrounded by that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
empty industrial buildings. It's sort of like it's given that kind of real estate a purpose, you know, the Hollywood thing, but
Mm.
even that is not happening as much anymore. So yeah, it's been pretty much the same the 10 years I've been here, but I've seen the other areas change. Yeah.
And tell me about your your background. So you grew up in Venice Beach, which is quite a sort of creative part of the city. Every time, I
Yeah.
mean, I've been there, and it just seems like a different vibe, more of a artsy vibe to it. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, that's right. The reason I grew up there is because my dad worked for Frank Gehry. He's an architect, and he worked for Frank Gehry before I was born. And Frank Gehry's office was in Santa Monica at the time. So he took up in Venice, which was a cheap place to have a house. And so he was an architect. My mom was a is a playwright. Uh, and so they were kind of living that sort of bohemian artist life. They're a
Right.
little older. They're a little older than hippies, so it didn't feel bohemian, if that makes sense. It was
Yeah.
more maybe a little more beatnik or something. They were like severe hippies that didn't have long hair.
Right. Yeah.
They were weirdos, but not.
Intellectual hippies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something like that. But free
Uh,
thinkers, definitely, like free thinkers for sure.
yeah, fantastic. And so, what was? I mean, can you remember the first time you saw a painting or a work of art that you thought, "I want to be an artist"? That's really
Yeah,
powerful.
I remember the specific painting. It was a palm tree by a painter named Leo Robinson.
Okay.
Who he's not very famous, but he taught at Cal State Fullerton in Southern California for a long time, and then went over to Philadelphia. And I think there's a women's college named Moore College of the Arts or something. It's all women. He taught
Okay.
there for a long time. Also, really great painter. He had this like 7 by 9. It was really tall, narrow painting of a palm tree hanging in his house, and I must have been 9 or 10 years old. And that painting, it was the moment I like the difference between looking at like the pictures on the cereal box and looking at the physicality of this painting and seeing I remember thick brush strokes, horizontal in the background that depict the sky. And the palm tree was really kind of, I think it was a gouache painting, but I might be wrong. But the palm tree was loosely handled. And the whole thing it was the first time I remember the difference in feeling of the object, of the painted object versus the printed cereal box. Because, I grew up in the 80s. It was all offset lithography, color printing on everything. Really bright,
Right.
really
Yeah.
perfect, but not digital yet. It was that old school kind of offset lithography. So,
And so there was this sort of light bulb moment where you were like,
yeah.
"Oh, this is different than
Oh, yeah.
looking at a cereal box. There was something about the material of it that obviously attracted you too."
Yes, definitely. The physicality of that, I mean, I think thinking back on it now, I would say that it was that I could see his hand in the picture. I could see a little bit how it was made, even though it still appeared to me very pictorial, and it like took me to when you look at a representation of something, it's a little bit like, oh, I'm in the place with the palm tree or whatever. So it had that effect, but then it like the print, like the cereal boxes or billboards or whatever, but it also had this like aura, this like thick feeling of being handmade.
Yeah, something that's been
Incredible
created
feeling.
by a human being, like
Yes,
not
right,
manufactured, like
right.
a unique object, like that's only made in that
Yeah,
instant or in that moment.
yeah. Because I studied Benjamin later, and so that stuff about the aura of the object and his the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. There's like this aura thing to the object. I hope I got that name right. People will laugh at me otherwise.
What is that, a book that was written about
It's I think it's just an essay, but it might be a book. It was written about it was about artwork after photography and mechanical reproduction, like printing press and uh, offset lithography and processes like that make pictures of things, and the difference between basically what it's like to stand in front of a Van Gogh and what it's like to hold a mug or like a coffee cup that has a picture of a Van Gogh on it. That
right.
he pretty much identified that there's this thing about objects that he calls aura, um, which I think that is the thing that I was identifying with that painting.
Well, it's funny because that's what I love about your work it's you can see the love of the material that I have as well. I don't like photorealistic paintings. They just don't, I'm not interested in them at all. It's something about the materiality of the painting and that handmade uniqueness that I always look for as well, like a Rembrandt or any of the old masters. But the great paintings always for me have to a Lucian Freud, where it's just this materiality of the painting is something that's so important for me, and that's what I see in that's why I love your work. I mean, there's a clear love for oil paint, which I have too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, basically oil paint is just, to me, the best medium for getting that feeling that I described from looking at the if I could do it with gouache, I would, but I can't, so I do it with oil paint. I find it's just there's more options. I can have it really thick and textured, and I can have it really thin, and I can do it all with the same
it's
paint.
endless. It's the most beautiful material. It's just endless.
I do actually have, I get a little bit, there's a lot of, I don't know, baggage or weight with oil paint that I feel like I have to address in the paintings.
Like what?
Especially when I'm working on Velázquez or something like that as a reference. Sometimes I wonder, do I really want all that? If I just painted in watercolors, couldn't I be a little freer? But it's all really interesting to me. So I really.
Why do you think there's baggage? That's interesting because of what?
When I say baggage, I just mean a history. There's a lot of history with the oil paint as a medium, and the way it looks, especially the way it looks on linen or canvas. In a nice square. I feel like as an artist, I almost feel like I have to address the history a little bit.
That's really interesting that you say that. You feel part of a sort of history within a history.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think it's what I like about working with painting, especially the oil paint. But also sometimes I feel like, I sometimes wonder, would there not be a medium without the baggage, without that historical connection?
I mean, I've tried all kinds of different painting techniques. I always come back to oil paint. It's just the most versatile. It's the most mysterious. It does the strangest things, but there's an element of control that you can have from it, and you can master it, but you never master it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where the mystery lies for me.
Well, and some of these things, that I identify as problems, like baggage or history or whatever, they end up being the thing that I like about it at the same time. That's what keeps me painting, is that history and that a little bit, my complicated relationship to the paintings that have been done before,
Yeah, I mean, I whenever I look at a painting, there always has to be mystery in a painting if I keep coming back to it. If I kind of get it, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but if there's a mystery to a painting, I'll keep wanting to see it over and over again. Like a Turner painting or like a Rembrandt. I just don't understand. Lately, I've been looking at a lot of Frank Auerbach paintings, and there's
right. What a master! Yeah, I have a real thing for Frank Auerbach.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm always interested. I'm always interested to hear more about what he was like and how he worked and stuff. It's very.
I mean, he was obsessed with the materiality of paint in general, but oil paint, all kinds of paint he used.
Well, and sometimes you find an artist where, I was never trying to copy Frank Auerbach, but I've made these paintings that look almost like they could be made by him. And I have in my life, the way I taught myself painting was to copy artists. So I'm not against copying people, but it was just very interesting to me to find this artist that I pretty much just landed in some similar territory to him. And I'm not quite sure. I'm always interested to find out how that happened,
he's one of those artists that really, you kind of don't know what to make of them. Well, for me, when I first saw his work, I didn't know what to make of it. And that was where the mystery was. That's why I'm so obsessed with Frank Auerbach, and I keep on looking at his work over and over again because I just kind of didn't know what to make of the work when I first saw it. But that's the depth and the like I keep saying, the mystery that I keep wanting to understand it. And somewhere in my head, I think if I look at that painting again, maybe I'll understand it a little bit more, but I still don't. It's like a fleeting feeling.
Yeah, he has what I would call a confident hand. Like those marks go down and they're like, it's just like, bam, so like correct. And you get the feeling he searches around a lot and then lands on just the right one, you know?
Yeah, you get the feeling that he would have tried, he was sort of going for something and he would have tried to just go for that over and over and over again until he felt like he had it. And then that was it. That was the moment.
But I think through that repetition, he gets more and more assured with his hand because like those final marks, you know, that dig down through the wet paint. I'm thinking of the paintings.
Yeah, and the palette knife that he drags through the paint sometimes.
Yeah, is it palette knife? Yeah. And then the drawings are kind of the opposite, you know, it's like feverish, like going over and over again, like, it's not right yet, it's not right yet. And erasing
and he would add paper as well to the charcoal drawings. He'd add paper, he'd stick paper on top of it. It was really
it's funny, it's like the paintings feel very confident and the drawings feel very anxious, but
yeah, they do feel different. Yeah, but I mean, apparently he used to paint over and over and over again. He would, you know, he'd spend years on paintings and he'd just go over the surface again and again and again. What he was trying to get, I'm not sure, but he was painting from life. So he was obviously trying to get this. His paintings, like they make me feel a certain way. It's like looking at a feeling, you know. It's not like looking at a portrait, like a Velázquez portrait, where you're looking at a painting of someone and it's like beautifully painted and a beautiful likeness. When you're looking at a Frank Auerbach painting, it's like looking at a feeling, like a feeling.
Yeah, you're looking at the artist a little more too, right? Yeah.
Say again.
Like looking back at the artist a little bit more. It's sort of like well, I mean, I think Velázquez did this eventually with Las Meninas, but in his paintings, it's so much about the subject. And in some ways, the Auerbach and and a lot of the really good like people from those like London schools, and it's about the figure, but it's kind of about the artist more than the
absolutely.
Look back at the creator instead. Yeah,
it almost tells you more about the artist than it does about the subjects.
Like Bacon. You have to. It's hard to not think about the person that made that painting when you look at a Bacon.
Oh, totally. It's like looking at a diary of his life and what was going on, the people that he was surrounded by.
Yeah, and like even if I knew nothing about Bacon, like I know that guy had something going on.
For sure. Like, Lucian Freud too. It's like looking at a diary of his life. You know, how old his kids were or who his friends were at the time.
Yeah, especially Freud. Yeah.
So what is your so your paintings, one of the main themes is horses. What's your relationship with horses and where does that all start from? What's the history there?
Okay, well, when I was a kid, my aunt would put me on horses, little kid, and they scared me like a lot. They were dressage horses that were like well trained, very sharp, you'd say, horses. So a little kid on one is a little bit like of a scary experience. Plus the horse can be a dangerous animal, so they scared me. And then
how old were you?
Oh, I think I was young. I was under 10. Maybe I was 10. I can't remember. I remember the horse's name.
So this is happening around the time you said that you saw that painting that really made an impression on you when
you
were 9. Similar time in your life.
Yeah. Honestly, it might have been the same trip. The time I'm thinking about, but yeah, the same time. And because it was on the East Coast. And then much later in my 20s, late 20s, I started dating a horse trainer. And this horse trainers work a lot. I mean, it's kind of an endless job and it's really hard. And there really is no finish, you know, like you're just always something more to do. And so in order to spend time with her, I started working at the barn with her. And that became a big part of my life. And we were married for about 10 years. And in that time, I really got into the care of horses and learning how to manage the animals and barns and how to feed them, how to care for them, how to ride them, how to train them. And it just became a very important part of my life. And somewhere in that 10 years, I started painting them because, I'd been an artist this whole time anyway. And and
So
working and
what were you painting before you decided to paint a horse for the first time?
I was working on the mountain series, which is still ongoing. It's an endless series, but it's basically these paintings of Mount Wilson that are a little bit like Frank Auerbach painting over and over again, except on different I'll change I'll move on to the next canvas
Mm-hmm.
to get what I want. So I've never quite found exactly what I want with that painting.
And so how old were you when you first painted a horse?
First painted a horse? Well, I did drawings of horses when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And in art school, I did a lot of drawings of horses, kind of like almost Raymond Pettibone type ink drawings.
And this was before you met the horse trainer?
Yeah, that was before meeting the horse trainer, before dating the horse trainer. Yeah, I think I already knew her.
So that's funny how they were kind of in your psyche.
Oh yeah.
At some
well,
level,
I was afraid of, like I said, yeah, they made me scared. And so something that makes me scared generally, like it takes up a place in my mind that is important. I don't know how to say that. Like if it scares me, I think about it.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like that when you see a painting and you don't like it initially, you're like, I don't like it, because you're kind of scared about it, but then you end up loving it, kind of thing.
Well, and I guess the thing with when I started working with them was that I got obsessed with it. I mean, I really full on. I mean, I was really professionally working as a horse person at the same time as being an artist.
And did your relationship change, as in you weren't scared when you were working with them? You became more confident around them?
Yes, exactly. Learning the language and the rules of the animal gave me this very special and different relationship to them, where like when you understand how to work with a certain medium or something, you can just, you don't have to think consciously about it. You can just act, and it's sort of, it becomes this whole like second nature thing to be with the animal. And so now I'm not scared of them. In fact, you never really understand another being, but I have a much more positive relationship to them now. And they're actually kind of like I don't know what it is. Like everything that art kind of doesn't do for me, I can kind of get from the horses in a sense. Like,
oh wow, that's really interesting.
Like a recharge, a spiritual connection thing.
Do you think the horses enjoy connecting with humans as well, or do you think they're forced to connect with humans? Like, because there's this amazing relationship that they have.
It's an interesting question. Yeah, like you have to get a little bit into anthropomorphizing the horse when you say, do they enjoy it? Horses enjoy eating, and they enjoy running, and they enjoy being out in the field. I don't know about the connection part. It's possible, but they've definitely got it figured out that our partnership is very important for them. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about, but our partnership is also a very important thing for us as a species. Like we wouldn't be where we are without them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And especially me here in Southern California. I mean, this part of the world was like, any part of the world was basically, the horse brought people there. So
yeah, I was recently listening to a podcast about the Mongolians and their relationship with horses. Completely, I mean, it was just a perfect timing in history that they, but they had this, they came out of the steppes and ruled the world. These people, these horse people, basically horse people.
And there's entire cultures that are based on that mode of transportation, that they exist because of the horse, and I'm in one of those cultures. But I mean, a lot of people are in those cultures, really. I mean, everywhere, especially because of the history of colonization and war and how horses were so integral to that. You can't imagine.
They've been so much a part of human history forever. And it's almost like, do horses at some level know that it's this interaction that they do with humans? I don't know. There must be some kind of connection there.
Yes. I mean, I think there's definitely like a spiritual link between us, but I do kind of balk at thinking of horses like applying a human in type of intelligence to the way the horses think. They think very differently, and that's one of the things I love about them is that they have all animals have their own rules, you know, and like once you sort of understand those rules, it's a very human thing to be able to interact now with those animals. And such a part of our like history as a species that just as much as art or you know, any kind of craft, it's just so I don't know. It makes me very excited kind of to be alive and having this experience. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's very important.
I mean, some of the earliest drawings that you see are of animals. I mean,
Horses.
Horses. Yeah. Early cave paintings.
Yeah, I don't want to make dog people angry, but I'm like, is the dog as important as the horses?
Well, are there cave paintings of dogs?
I don't think so.
I think it was horses and like bison type animals.
Yeah, some kind of buffaloes and definitely some bears. I think there were bears.
So do you feel part of that tradition, sort of, that goes even
I've thought about it. You mean the cave painting tradition?
Yeah.
That's another one, like with I mean, those are humans that made those, but they're so far away. It's so hard to come to it. Like, that doesn't feel quite like the history that I'm talking about when I talk about oil paint.
No.
That's a little bit further back.
But somewhere inside of me, I think, because I'm an artist, that I would have been one of those people. Because surely not I don't think everyone in those communities that were living in cave dwellings and things like that were painting on the caves. It would have been a select few of the people. And I always think to myself, I would have been one of those people. I have the urge to make marks.
Yeah, and what I think when I look at those, one thing that I really do agree with Freud on is this interest in the human being as an animal.
Right.
That we're just another, you know, we're a type of animal, kind of an ape or whatever. And when I look at those cave paintings, I'm like, wow, you know, art is part of what this animal does. It's like, that's just the kind of animal we are, which is a little, you know, it's hard to analyze yourself, but to say like the human animal, like art is definitely a part of that.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Exactly that. You know, I just think, what is this strange thing that I like to paint and I like to make art and I really love it. Like, it's my whole life. And sometimes I get, you know, a little bit self-reflective and I think, why? But, you know, when you look at those early humans and there was, you know, clearly a need, like a deep need that humanity has to create art and representation.
And you look at those Lascaux cave paintings of the horses, and there's one in Spain of these red bulls, and I just think like we haven't even got that much better, you know, like those things are so good.
Oh, absolutely,
and charcoal on a piece of rock, it's just incredible.
Yeah, they're really, I think, some of the greatest works of art I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because there's also just such a there was no need, like, it's art now has been so commodified, and you know, you get the big galleries representing people and it's almost like an asset class for rich people to put their money into. There's none of that back then. There's none of that.
Maybe it was.
Maybe.
I doubt it. I think you're right, probably, but it does.
Maybe they held a significant place part in the society. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it feels special though, in the same way, like, you know, like above the other stuff, you know, like we find their tools and stuff like down in the dirt or whatever, but these paintings are like, you know, up in these crazy caves, all removed. I am also interested in those old tools, you know, that you can see the hands napping on the flints.
Yeah, and I'm sure there would have been, you know, artisans that were expert at making those kind of tools as well. You know, there would have been all those people in society back then.
Yeah, and they were more like the designers.
Sure. Yeah, the product designers.
Not artists. They were product designers, right?
Exactly. And then there would have been the people, you know, going to get the food and people making the fire. And, you know, there would have been all of these. And there's people like, you know, the people now in society now, you know, it's just extrapolated. So, you know, in such a fragmented, in such a like a diverse way now. But essentially, all of those human needs are just the same.
Yeah, and I'm sure somebody was doing the marketing for those hand tools, you know, like representing them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So your first horse painting, you just thought
Yeah.
I'll try and paint a horse because I love horses.
Yep.
What was it?
Um, well, we're talking about the horse paintings since I started working with them.
I mean, I love your horse paintings, and I just want to have some kind of understanding of,
Yeah.
how that evolved and what that
Yeah.
process is for you, and what goes on.
Yeah. The first instinct to paint a horse was in college. I was reading The Maltese Cat by Kipling, and I went to the downtown library and looked up. I went down and like looked up horse breeds or like some kind of horse book that had lots of images of horses in it, and I just started drawing them out of the book. Uh, that was in art school, and I would do those ink drawings, and I would write some little quote from the Maltese Cat on it, like vaguely related to horses. This is like I was kind of copying Pettibone and do you know Raymond Pettibone?
Yeah.
Punk artist, yeah. So I was copying those kind of things.
Where did you go to art school?
Otis College of
Okay.
Art. It's in Los Angeles, right near the airport, LAX.
It's where Philip Guston went.
Yeah, actually it is, but it wasn't there then. It was in a different part of LA.
Okay.
It moved, but yeah, it is. I think Guston went there. A few good artists have actually gone there, and I was there at a really lucky time when there were some really good studio mentors there. So didn't get a lot of painting training from that school, but some interesting ways to think about art, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, the art school education in England is very much like that. The training's not. It's kind of like
Yeah,
you have to do it yourself, but it's more
yeah,
about the way of thinking about creating things.
right, right. That makes sense. Yeah. When did that change in England? Because wasn't England very kind of more academic and uh, instructional? Like,
That's been going because I went to Chelsea School of Art in the year 2000, and I was really looking for instruction on how to paint, and I thought I'd be taught by like a Lucian Freud type character, but
really,
it
like
wasn't
Cold
like that
Street
at
and
all.
all those guys.
No, it wasn't like that at all. It's yeah, very much. I think they were coming out of the kind of YBA, like the Damien Hirst era of the
Yeah, yeah,
90s, where it was
yeah.
very much conceptual art was the thing. And so, yeah, I was quite disappointed because I've always been, a lover of painting. And
Yeah, yeah, it gets. Yeah, I was in school in the same time, roughly, and yeah, to do painting, you had to be really like tongue in cheek and sarcastic. It
right,
was supposed to be a joke or something, and
it
um,
seemed a bit too traditional.
I'm not even. Yeah, I guess so. And at the time, yeah, it was just like the feeling I had was like you could only do it if you were doing it like bad in the bad way,
Right.
the as like a statement. So that seems to have totally changed now.
And it always painting, it always people always come back to painting. Like there
Yeah.
might be fads and fashions and different things that break through, but painting has always been it's always been there. It always has since medieval times, since
Mhm.
Europeans started painting.
Right, right.
It's always been there. But
Yeah.
so yeah, and so when you started painting horses, you just I mean, you just love this process of using the horse, using the figure of the horse
Yeah.
to kind of experiment with different ways of painting and different mark making and different.
Yeah, applying the paint and working through a picture, making a picture. But with the horses was the first time I started getting into this likeness thing where like I was trying to depict very specific horses, and um, now most people will think that horses all kind of look the same, which is true. But when you get very close to them, they all look just as different uh, as people or whatever. And so, yeah, I with the mountains, I was like really inventing a lot of it. I didn't care if it looked like Mount Wilson. I was trying to see kind of what other images would bubble up from the painting process. And with the horses, I was really like the way it works is I sit in the paddock with them and I draw while they're grazing or draw them. It's almost always while they're grazing because that's where they stay still long enough for me to get the drawing done. Occasionally I've done one with the head up where it was standing like that for a while, but it takes me 20 to 30 minutes to get the drawing about right to where I can work from it in a painting. So grazing is the most common. And then I take that into my studio and I blow it up in some way on the canvas. And then I have basically a big drawing on the canvas and I work from there. But then you're right. Yeah. It's about like, working with the paint in this way that makes a lot of sense to me and this visual language that I've developed, over the last 15 or so years of making these paintings. And are
you always experimenting with painting techniques? As in, like, are you always going for something? Are you going into the studio and trying to like surprise yourself, or are you always trying to just push something new? What's the kind of mindset?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. I think a little bit like what makes me want to do the next painting is this feeling that I got it almost right on the previous one, but had I done this or that differently, I think I might be able to have really gotten it right. And then that does seem to be kind of endlessly interesting to me. So then I can just keep going with it. If I ever don't feel that, then I kind of can't make the painting. But I always have this like, if I had just done it this way. And so I think that's a little bit what you're talking about, experimentation.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. It's like in your head you're going for something, then you try and start painting, and another thing comes out, but it's just as interesting, and then you kind of want to go for that other thing, the next painting, and it's just endless. It never stops.
And sometimes it's like a hypothesis. I'm like, I bet I could make a red painting of a horse or something, and then I try, and I'm like, I wasn't able to do that, but this painting came out cool. And but yeah, and then technically, I do experiment. Yeah, I have lots of little things that I'm always working on just to see what happens. Like I've been messing with glazing. I never varnish for one thing, but I had never. My paintings are made really alla prima, so kind of in one pass, all at once, and I'd never really figured out a way to go back into a painting once it had dried. And lately, or in the last couple of years, I've been experimenting with glazing, like in like an old master's sense, just transparent thin layer of color over the impasto.
And what do you glaze with? An oil, or do you glaze with a terps?
I glaze with just oil when I'm doing that. So I'm trying to get it to dry really slow because the impasto, I let it dry for a while, and paint dries quickly in Southern California, so that helps.
Sure.
But I'm a little nervous to have like this thin layer over this thing that's drying slowly, and worried about cracking a little bit. But so far I've had some good results with it. If I keep it thin enough, it does seem to work pretty, like not thin with thinner, but thin with oil.
When I first started looking at your paintings in 2017, they were quite washy, and I can see over the years they've moved into this sort of impasto, more structured kind of form.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and they started out more impasto, like probably in 2014 or 15 when I started doing the mountains. I think that was 2015. They were really, really thick, and just with one brush size, so number 8 filbert, the whole painting, even if it was big. And yeah, and then that's sort of what's happening is underneath that impasto is a washy, terped out oil painting. That's the drawing kind of, and then I go onto the drawing with the thick paint, and that's what's alla prima. But yes, I went through a phase where like I left a lot of that drawing exposed, and did less of the impasto. And they were.
I love them both, but I've seen the development as you say. You're constantly kind of going for that next thing, and I can see how it's funny when the quality of time where you have that luxury of looking back 10 years through all the work, you think, oh, it kind of makes more sense. At the time, you're just in it, you're doing it, and then you look back at 10 years before what you were doing, and it kind of makes complete sense. It's like, I understand what I was trying to do then.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I ever understand it, but I do like looking back at it. Um, yeah, it's so funny. I
And you,
honestly can't quite see a painting until that I've made until at least, I don't know, like 3 to 6 months after I've finished it.
oh yeah.
That's
Or what about if you're looking at work that you did 10 years ago? Does it?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's kind of fascinating, isn't it?
yeah. That's right. Yeah, I think I can see that a
Artists
little bit.
work with the time. Like when I talk about the quality of time, it's like, looking at how long a painting dries, how long it takes to make. Like artists are constantly working with time. How long it will be around for, how long people want to look at it for. It's there's a
Yeah,
quality of time involved in art.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and that's sort of true for the change between the mountain paintings and the horse paintings is that the mountain paintings are really fast. Like it's like a really fast process, and the horse paintings they take a little longer, and it has to do with that getting that likeness of the horse. I have to really sit back and evaluate it a little bit
Mhm.
and give it that time to make adjustments.
And so, would
But
you say that would you, these mountains and the horse theme are your two main themes? I know that you also um, the Velázquez theme is something that you work on as well. Um,
yeah.
do you ever see
Uh,
an end in sight for the horse paintings, or is it something that you think you can do forever?
mm, I think I can only do it as long as I'm working with them.
Hmm.
So, because I literally paint the ones that I have a very strong relationship to. And in general, I paint things that are near me, like physically and emotionally. But so, like the mountain painting, that mountain is going to be, if I'm in LA, that thing's going to be near me. So, I'm sort of stuck with. The horses, I don't know that I'll always work with them. So, we'll see if I have that relationship to horses. It sort of depends on what happens with my horse life.
Mm.
But it has uh there are other things that I work with, and in general, like these a little bit like cliches within the world of painting, like the landscape or the equestrian portrait. Like the composition of my horses is very much based on those old like Stubbs, and
Hmm.
there's so many names in equestrian portraiture, but
Sure.
like,
Yeah, I was
um
just thinking of a few before this
yeah.
conversation. I was just thinking of some of the great horse paintings. Have you ever been to the Prado in Madrid and
I
seen?
haven't, but that's where Las Meninas is. I
Yeah,
would love to go
exactly.
there. Yeah.
But there's also an amazing Titian because the Spanish
Oh
court
wow.
bought all of Titian's, his greatest work basically, and there's an amazing equestrian portrait there of King Philip of Spain, and he's riding the horse, and the horse is kind of none of its feet are on the ground. I can't remember, but
Yep.
it really looks like it's in motion. It's just an
Yeah.
amazing painting.
I
But
can
it's a
imagine.
profile. It's always a profile.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of the convention. And so there's something, and I haven't really like a little bit on purpose haven't tried to figure out what this is about, but there's something about the convention or the cliche or whatever you want to call it. It's like it has to do with that history that I'm a part of with oil painting. The repetition of that, the familiarity,
Mhm.
very important for me with how I choose my subjects, and something to do with the form that I'm looking for with my brush strokes is like it works very well on those kind of cliched. I say cliche. I try not to say that like in a negative sense. Like just it works very well with these often repeated images that we've had, especially for throughout art history.
Yeah, this subject. I mean, like George Stubbs, he would have painted horses. That was his subject. That's what he would have constantly
Yeah,
tried to. It's a form of that. It's
yeah, right. Like I'm almost like if for the horse to Stubbs for me, if I'm it would be like the cliche is my horse. Like I'm just looking for the next. So I could see myself doing still lifes. I could see myself operating on that very like close up level. I've been doing a lot of portraits, human like figures lately, trying to figure out portraits for myself. And I'm not totally ready to show that stuff yet, but it's kind of there is all these other possibilities for the way I paint. and like what that could land on.
100%. I mean, every mark that you make, it feels like you're, how do I say this? It's like there's a purpose to every mark you make, as in, like, when I'm looking at your paintings, the marks seem like they're sort of, there's a purpose to them. Like, they're done with thought. Each mark is done with a thought and a purpose, you know, which is the greatest paintings like that.
Yeah, that's how I feel when I'm painting. And it's like, yeah, but exactly what that thought or the purpose is, a little bit escapes me in terms of trying to describe it. But yeah, that's sort of the game, I guess.
And do you work to a specific size? I mean, are there sizes that you like working with when you're looking at canvas, or?
Well, I guess generally I work large to small. So usually if I'm starting a new painting project or a new idea, I kind of, I don't know about sketch. I'll usually do the big ones first. I just find that I can act with more space on the canvas. I can act a little more recklessly, and then there's more like forgiveness because of that amount of space for me to kind of get what I want. And then as I bring it down smaller and smaller in scale, there's one over my shoulder. I don't know if you can see it back there, but those are the hardest ones for me to make, because those have to be with that confidence and thoughtfulness. You know, there's only so much room. So I generally go big to small, and big for me these days is like 6 feet by 4 feet. I used to do 8 feet by 6 feet, but those are such a nightmare to deal with in the studio. And it's almost like if they work, it's just as bad as if they don't work, because now I have to deal with storing this huge canvas.
Right.
Transporting it is a pain, and every part of it is annoying. So I kind of keep it to 6 feet by 4 now, which is, for contemporary art, that's not a big painting. But it's big enough for me to, like, you know, get that effect I want of having some forgiveness. And then the mountains are really specified. They're in this, I don't know what you call it, like aspect ratio of 1.33 to 1.4. So they're always on that kind of rectangle in a portrait orientation. And the horses have always been horizontal, and there's a lot of different sizes, but I pretty much just base it off the drawing. Whatever the horse is in the drawing, that's what I want the canvas to be. So I've come to realize that what I really want in the horses is for their back to be against the top of the canvas, their tail to be against one, so they're boxed in very neatly into the frame. And if I get it just right, you know, it could almost be like an abstract structuralist thing, where there's just the negative space is just these little cutouts, and the horse just is like perfectly fit into the canvas. That's what I like. But so those all vary in size. There's a lot of commissions with the horses too. The people like to commission their horses.
Right.
And I can sort of do that, but the way it works is I have to go meet the horse and kind of hang out with them for a while, and just, well, for one thing, I have to draw them grazing. But for them to even want to graze while I'm there with them, we have to hang out for a little while, because usually a horse is kind of nervous with a new person. But
yeah, it's a bit like painting a portrait commission. It's very difficult to do if you've
yeah,
if you don't know the person.
Get them to relax a little. Right. If you don't know them, what do you talk about? Like
how do you know how the way they look, or the way they smile, or the way they, I don't know, frown even? It's very difficult, you know.
I do get the feeling though, like Sargent and Velázquez and all those guys were like really good talkers.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
That's sort of the thing.
Definitely.
There's no way they weren't.
No, definitely. I think they were very jovial characters, and I even think Lucien Freud was.
I think he was famous for it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, apparently when he sat, he had loads of stories. I mean, famously, the Queen didn't want to speak to him when she was sitting for him, because every time she spoke, he would stop painting and talk to her for like half an hour, and she thought the sittings would take forever.
You know what I like about the portraits is that you can talk as much as you want, and then if you want them to stop talking, you can just say, "Hey, I'm working on your mouth."
Yeah.
So just close your mouth for a minute, and then you can work on whatever you want. But if you want them to stop talking for a second,
yeah, And it's almost rude, but in the context of painting a portrait, it's they just understand it.
Yeah, they just take it totally differently than if you said that. Yeah, at the dinner table.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
So have you seen Lucian Freud's paintings of his horse paintings?
I have never seen the horse paintings in person. No,
because he loved horses. Like his
I
second
do. I'm aware
love.
that he had that he kind of grew up riding, and I know he owned a couple of racehorses or something.
I'm not sure if he owned them. They don't go into that. And I've read his biography twice, but he was obsessed with horses. Like, painting was probably number one, but almost second was horse racing. He used to bet on horses, and he used to love riding them, and especially riding them bareback. He didn't like wearing saddles. Because he was very into. I think he was quite a feral, earthy, and like not feral in a bad way, but just he loved. He didn't believe in convention, and he just really wanted to be like raw with things and raw with like the horse, instead of wearing a saddle.
Yeah, no, and bareback riding is a little bit of a different thing, and it's with certain horses, it's kind of easier. You get the saddle on them, and it's all cinched up, and they get really anxious and nervous, and if you just jump on them, they stay much more relaxed. It's a weird thing, but
yeah, I think he was obsessed with that, and he. I mean, you can see in his horse paintings. I mean, what do you think of his horse paintings?
I love them. I especially love the pictures of like David Dawson like holding a horse, and Freud is standing. It's the pictures of him painting the horses. And it would have been later on.
They feel very personal, don't they? They feel like very like he feels very connected and personal, and like there's a sort of love within the horse.
Well, and he just seems like such a hermit, like this curmudgeon in because all his paintings are of his studio, that I love to see him like that he got his easel and got his paints and went out somewhere and actually set up in the horse's stall. It's probably the only time he painted outside of his studio very often. I mean,
I've never thought about that. That's absolutely
the impression
right.
that I get. So I like seeing those pictures.
Yeah, I do too. No, definitely. But I think they're surprisingly. I wish there was more. Like they're really
not that
really
many.
good.
Right? There's some drawings. I've seen a couple drawings. I don't even know if he did a print of a horse or not, etchings, but I've seen it maybe two paintings and a couple drawings is what I know of.
He painted one of his portraits was of one of the royal family, and they gave him access to. It was one of the Parker Bowls. I can't remember exactly who, and he had a connection to the royal stables, and so they used to go early in the morning. They used to go around Hyde Park together and ride around Hyde Park and things like that. But he was obsessed with horse riding. He was obsessed with horses.
Yes, and the Queen too, right? Like raised racehorses, and that's a bigger deal in England, I guess, than here.
What's the horse culture like in LA?
We have racehorses. It's a little bit it's gotten really contested with like animal rights people and just the kind of it's a fairly brutal sport, it's like it's not easy on the animals, but it is the ultimate. I mean, a horse running that's what a horse does. So it makes so much sense when you watch them racing. It's a beautiful thing to me, beautiful to watch, but there's a lot of money in Southern California. So in general, the horse sports are kind of more like competition oriented, and it's a lot of young kids trying to achieve like really high results or whatever you would say, like in competition. And the horses I work with are all jumpers, so they do like hunter jumper disciplines, and it's a pretty big deal here. I think it's there's a lot of people involved in it. It's not as big as it is in other parts of the country, but it's a pretty healthy industry here, and because of how much like disposable income there is in Southern California, people go pretty crazy with it. So a lot of importing horses from Europe, bringing them over, and the trainers will work with them for a little while themselves and then get them ready for the new owners. And so that's a lot of horse showing, a lot of training, and a lot of turnover. So sales, there's a bunch of horse sales where this one didn't work for my kids, so we're going to sell it and get a new one. And who's going to buy this one, and
Right.
it's a whole industry. But
And what's your favorite painting of a horse that you've ever seen?
oh, my favorite painting of a horse that I've ever. Well, that's a funny question. Uh, well, that there is. It's not a painting, but I'm gonna forget this guy's name. An LA artist. He's a sculptor. He makes God, what's his name? I'm gonna forget it. There's a relief. It's a sculptural relief of a horse. It's a wall sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
I think made out of aluminum or metal, and it's a very subtle, very realistic horse, but kind of just bulging out of this big aluminum sheet on the wall. And it's very.
Whereabouts?
It was at Matthew Marks when I saw it, and this guy is not Ray Charles Ray.
Oh yeah.
Charles Ray is the artist, and I can't remember the name of the. He mostly works with figurative stuff, like and real like three-dimensional sculpture. So he did like a crashed car where he reproduced every part of a crashed car and put it together in the gallery.
But it's not a painting.
It's a relief. It looks like a painting, but it is actually sculptural relief. So
Okay.
then another one would be I don't like a lot of horse art, basically.
No.
Like, especially contemporary. It's not as some of the like kind of more Western stuff I actually do like those guys who sit out and paint horses on ranches and stuff. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of horse painting right now in contemporary painting that I really don't like. It either
Right.
like it's either like kind of glorifies it just to me when I look at it, it just shows a sort of an ignorance of the animal and what it's about. One of the paintings I'm thinking of is Laura Owens. It's a painting from probably 20 years ago, and it's a maybe it's a carousel horse, but it's like very a kind of cartoony, pretty horse that's like prancing and has a lot of decorations on it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of like photographs. It's like somebody found a photograph of a horse and just projected it and painted it with weird colors. That's a very common thing, and that sort of bothers me. And the ones I really like are a little bit older. I love Stubbs. I love pretty much everything Stubbs did with horses. There's another English equestrian artist, and I can't remember his name, but he got in like trouble politically. I think he's more recent than Stubbs, but
Is he called something Richards? Oh God, I
it
can't
could
remember.
be. I can't remember the name, but I remember that all he did was paint horses, and he
Yeah.
got in some kind of weird political trouble, maybe around World War II. Like he might have been
Okay.
sympathetic to Germany or something like that. I don't remember what.
Oh really? Wow.
Something weird, like something you really wouldn't expect. He was like kind of a. Anyway, I can't remember enough about him to put that on the record.
Some of George Stubbs's paintings of horses are amazing. When you look up close, the brushwork and things like
Yeah,
that are actually
yeah,
it's like really simple. And then you go back and you look at the painting from afar, and it really works. But then when you
yeah,
go up close, you just think, wow, he's just made. I mean, it's
yeah,
almost like similar to the brushwork that you. It's like really impasto and really just simple but beautiful,
yeah.
like really effective.
Yeah, and that painting of Whistle Jacket that's got no background, it's just this like this beautifully painted perfect horse on like in a void. Uh that very much sits in my mind like when I'm working on the horses because mine sort of don't have a background really either.
Yeah.
Oops, I don't know what's happening.
No, don't worry, it's fine.
Um um but yeah, that Whistle Jacket one, it's just like burned in my mind, almost the way the princess from Las Meninas is. It's just like I
Yeah.
can't forget that image.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I mean when I say the history of oil painting, like I can't look at a painting of a horse without having that in my mind a little bit. And
Hmm.
if what I'm seeing doesn't understand that, I just feel like yeah. So that's why I have a hard time with horse art today. There's a ton of it, and uh,
Hmm.
and it's either I don't know. It's just it bothers me in some way that's hard to define really.
Well, maybe because you feel like you're connected to the history of art, and there's
Yeah.
Like someone that's, I mean, I just think someone that doesn't understand the history of art or is even curious, like I don't even like I'm not like someone that you need to be an intellectual, like absolutely not. But if you
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
any curiosity about things, I think there's just a real ignorance there, you know.
Yeah.
And so just having a curiosity about where you sit within the long history of art, you know, all the greatest artists like Francis Bacon and you know, Lucian Freud, we're talking about them, that they really understood the history of art. They were fascinated in the history of art. They would go and look at
Yeah.
old master paintings all the time, and they would try and, you know, I mean, Freud famously called it like going to see the doctor. You know, if you had a problem with your
Yeah.
painting, you go and
Yeah.
have a look at an old master.
Totally. Yeah. They just had a Velázquez, Queen Margaret, I think, painting at the Norton Simon that I went to go see, which was really interesting, but they had hung it on a bright red wall. Like
Oh,
they painted
really?
the wall bright red and then hung this painting, which the painting had a lot of red in it. But once they had hung it on the bright red wall, it was like the red all turned brown. It just couldn't, it was the dumbest idea. I was like, why did you do that?
Who's making those decisions?
I have no idea. I mean, I guess a curator. And
Bloody curators.
yeah, I just find that word so weird.
I know it's become such a thing in the art business now. It's like I'm a curator, the most important person in the room.
Yeah, weird. But yeah, that was a terrible choice. Red wall, red painting. It just killed like half of the painting, and it's hard to do that with Velázquez. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of trying to look at it like that or something, and it's been. But yeah, I do like to go look at old paintings, and
Velázquez, is he one of your favorite artists?
Yeah, I don't know about favorite. I mean, I have a thing with him, which is kind of like what you're saying about Stubbs or me, which is just like such an economy of laying on paint. Like it just so much happens with so little with him, you know, like that. You can get these like you just know that the dress is made of this crazy silk, this very specific kind of silk.
Yeah.
Just by like, I don't know, it's not even a highlight, just by like the relative value of that silk to the dark that's placed behind it. And he just gets textures
and some areas of the painting are so thin, you just think he's hardly even touched.
Yeah,
it's like a wash.
Yeah, exactly. And but it doesn't feel, you know, one thing I find in a lot of paintings that I don't like is that there's been a lot of anxious work being done to disguise the hand, you know, in some sense, like either blending or kind of, I don't know, just to me it reads like kind of the opposite of Auerbach, where you have like this, instead of this confident mark going down, it's like this anxious nervousness that
there's like a dither in the brush work.
And it kind of kills the surface to me.
You mean on a Velázquez specifically?
No. Not on Velázquez. More on like paintings that I see today that are trying to be classical or trying to be correct, like that. It's just, like an overworked nervousness that in Velázquez is just completely missing. I mean, he just insane. So yeah, I basically I respect him. I don't know if I do like him as an artist too. I think he got a lot done within his cultural context, like in some ways, like is the predecessor of everything we're doing now with art, you know, like with this personal expression through like cultural expression and the other way around. Like that Las Meninas painting, it's like you can look at that thing forever. It's really hard to get to the end of that one.
Yeah, it's sort of, I know what you mean. It's sort of a precursor to what the culture that we're in today. It's like looking at ourselves within a culture and what does that mean?
Yeah. And it would be like what Don Quixote is to the novel, Velázquez is to painting. That specifically Las Meninas is to contemporary painting. It's just really, it's crazy that it happened at that time, you know, but I mean, maybe it's not.
He's a fascinating guy because he had so much access to power working so closely with the king, but He must have, like you say, he must have been a really good talker. I mean, I think it just seems like the king put a lot of trust in him, and he didn't put a lot of trust in many people.
Right. It's an interesting. I find it fascinating, like as a person and an artist, and he's obviously like a little bit tricky. Like he's hiding things left and right in those paintings. Tricky, like with his ideas. You know, like paintings weren't really supposed to be about the artist's ideas back then, but he was getting them in there, and I just think it's so interesting.
Yeah, and just recently I found out that he hadn't painted for 3 years when he went to Rome to paint the Pope.
Oh, really? That Pope painting, Bacon?
Yeah, so he was, and that Pope painting is one of the greatest, I think, one of the greatest portraits ever painted. But he hadn't actually painted for 3 years prior to that. He had been building the collection and advising on, I think there was a war going on between the Spanish and the Dutch, and he was involved in that, and he was involved in like like court politics, and as well as being the court painter. And so it's just amazing his life, like I said, he had so much access to power.
Well, just imagine being on a 3-year dry spell, and then you think to yourself, I'm going to go paint the Pope.
And just imagine being on a 3-year dry spell when you're such a good painter like that. Surely, like, don't you need to paint? Like, isn't it like an urge? Or, I mean, I can't believe there's more important things than, Velázquez not, how could he not paint for 3 years?
He wasn't, I guess he wasn't allowed to, but it works because he came out with that Pope painting.
Yeah, and it almost seems like he had improved almost, like that Pope painting.
It actually, like he was better for it. Maybe we should all take a 3-year break and just see what happens, and then put ourselves in a really intimidating situation.
Yeah, exactly. You've got some works going off to, is it Dallas?
Got horse paintings going to Dallas with, it's I think 6 of the horses that I've been working with at this. It's sort of a new barn that I'm working at, new for me anyway. Down in Temecula, which is like a couple hours south of here, and so it's the horses that I've been working with there, and they're going off to Dallas for this art fair, Dallas International, and then I have a show coming up at Night Gallery in November.
Is that a solo show?
That's a solo show, yeah, in their East Gallery, which is like a really nice, almost a square. It's like a big, wide rectangle room with white walls, high ceiling, a very proper painting gallery. So, if you don't know Night Gallery, a lot of they have different gallery spaces, and some of them are more unconventional and favor like sculptural work or really large work. They're all really beautiful spaces, but this one has like kind of the conventional painting feel to it. So I'm really excited for that show.
Fantastic. How many paintings will be in a solo show in LA?
Well, I think it's going to be 8 paintings total, but whenever I think it's going to be 8, it usually ends up being like 6. I set a goal for how many paintings I want to be in the show. So I'll say 8, and then I'll make 10 paintings. And then when I go to hang them, I'll hang the 8 that I think I like, work the best. And then I'll usually take out 20% of those. So maybe it'll end up being 6 paintings. Right. I tend to overhang a room.
And whose advice do you take? Who do you listen to?
I have this sort of process of trying to assume the meta position. It's going to sound weird, or like maybe Southern California hippie talk, but I try to get outside of myself, somewhere above myself, and look down and see myself as an artist hanging his show, dealing with all, with my own ego, dealing with all the egos of the people I'm working with. And from that meta position, I find I can usually, basically I try not to do my own first thought, which is to pack the room full of work.
Yeah.
But I try to also not just do whatever somebody tells me, like only hang 5 paintings or just do the green ones. And so this thing I'm describing about assuming the meta position is my strategy for neither doing my own will nor the will of everybody else. I find some other solution, and then that's what I go with. Usually that means, kind of removing a couple. And I think that's worked well for me. I don't know.
No, that does make sense. It's like what you want to do is usually too emotionally based, and what other people want usually don't have so much of a connection. So yeah, you have to kind of find that in between path.
But they might have good ideas. So yeah, I don't want to let the good ideas go either. So I just that's how I think of it, is like I'm looking down on myself almost as a different from a different perspective, so that I can like get out of my, I don't know, get out of that egotistical emotional place for a minute. So
well, listen,
I don't do that when I'm making the paintings. It's all me all the time, and then when I go to install them, that's what I try to do. Yeah.
Andy, listen, I could carry on talking to you for ages, but it's been, it's been over an hour we've been speaking, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about art, my favorite thing to talk about. And I love your work. And I look forward to seeing more of it. This solo show in LA in November sounds fascinating, and I'll try and make it for there.
Oh, cool. Definitely. Yeah, I'd love to meet you. It'd be great if you're in person.
Great, Andy. Thanks so much.
All right. Yeah, that was fun. Thanks a lot.
Speak soon. Bye.